Do you remember what it was when you first saw it? Was it the scope of it, the kind of the ambition, the big war themes, or was it also the emotional thing, those quartet of characters?
I think it was the love stories, really, even when I was quite young, that got me. But it's always quite, in a way, exciting when it's up against a scenario when you think everything's going to go wrong. So even if the love affairs survive within themselves, there's a war just about to start, and you reckon if the lovers don't clobber it themselves, the war certainly will. But I never dreamt that X years later I would be involved with the piece so intimately, because really the idea to do a musical based on From Here to Eternity wasn't mine in the first place. It was the chap who wrote the music, of whom hardly anybody here will have heard, a young man called Stuart Brayson, who I'd known for years. He came up to me in the street in 1981 and said, "Are you Tim Rice?" And I thought, this is a difficult question to answer. I wonder what he wants. But I said yes, and he said, "Listen to this," and he gave me a cassette. It shows how long ago it was. And I played it on the way home, and he said I'm a songwriter, and I played the cassette on the way home. And it was the era of Duran Duran. You're too young to remember that, Francine. Spandau Ballet, all that. And they were really good 80s type pop songs. And I still love 80s stuff, even though my era is really the Everly Brothers and Elvis and Buddy Holly and all that. But it was good stuff. So I kept in touch with Stuart, and he had a pop group for a while, which did okay, but nothing sensational. And then he said, "I'm going to start writing musicals." And I thought, yeah, good luck, mate. But he began sending me CDs. He sent me about, 3 every 6 months, CDs of entire scores. He did one on Oscar Wilde, one on Miners Up North, one space musical, one teenage rock musical, one on Shelley, another one based on the film Wall Street. He kept turning them out. And Mata Hari, he got that one on in Blackpool. And they all had something. And I thought, this guy's really good. And then he sent me From Here to Eternity. And I've always said, which is dead true, that the key to any great movie or musical or whatever is the story, and it's a great story. And that was a very good score, so that was what got me going. I said, well, this one could work. It's got a great story, and you've written some great tunes.
Well, when you think about the film, which obviously you've had to do, even while going back to the book for this, is it the big moments that you think of? Is it, sort of Bert and Deborah there on the shore while the wave pounds in? And that's the problem. That is the big image, isn't it?
Yes, although ironically, it isn't actually in the book. That was an inspiration by Fred Zinnemann had this brilliant idea, and it's one of the great images of cinema. It's not, in a way, we don't really have the rights to that. We thought of, well, let's do it, and let's hope we get sued for publicity, because we have the rights to the book, not the movie. But really, this could sound rather pretentious, but really what that scene is saying is we are breaking all the taboos. We're having this totally illicit love affair, and the symbolism, again, I don't want to get too much into symbolism, but the idea of the waves rushing over the bodies and nothing else matters. And that's what we want to capture in our show. And I think Tamara Harvey, the director, has caught that. But you won't literally, if you're in the front row, you won't have to take a Mac. You won't get sloshed by, at least as far as I know. We've got dress rehearsals coming up tonight and Friday, so maybe that is a surprise in store. But it's very intriguing. Everybody says, how are you going to do that scene? And it's not actually in the book. They do go down in the book. They go down to the beach, and they're not going to build sandcastles. They're going down for love and romance and getting away from it all. And that's what we have to illustrate, rather than try and copy or emulate a brilliant cinematic image.
Because there will be, obviously, you must have been aware from the beginning, there will be expectations, won't there?
Well, I suppose the odd critic might be sitting there saying, right, give us the waves, mate. But, I think most critics are far more intelligent than that.
Of course.
Especially the ones here tonight.
Something that did strike me the last time that I saw the film is that actually the opening of it is there's a lot of music all the way through the film, but it's sort of found music. It's kind of...
Yeah, there's no real, and this isn't a criticism at all, there's no great theme music. It's just, it's there, and it's one of those great scores which lives up to the cliche. If you don't notice it, it's good. And Frank Sinatra had a hit song called From Here to Eternity, which a lot of people think is in the movie, but it's not. It was recorded by him as a sort of afterthought. This was a big comeback for him. And he's brilliant in the film. He won the Oscar for Best Supporting Actor. And I suspect, although I don't really know, that they all said, "Hey, Frank, you've just had a big hit with this. Let's do a song called From Here to Eternity." Mm. It wasn't one of his greatest songs, to be honest. It was. I mean, anything Sinatra did was great, but it wasn't up there with High Hopes or All the Way, Chicago, all those other great songs.
No, but I suppose the other thing that did strike me is that you see them there in the barracks, and there's a lot of marching, and there's that American singing as you march thing.
Yes.
So there's actually, it's all quite kind of choreographed, and in a way it has a sort of sound to it. Are those some of the things that you've tried to get in?
Armies are choreographed a lot of the time. If you're in the army, you are told to move with other people at the same time in the same direction. And so that naturally lends itself, I think, to a theatrical presentation. And the other thing which is in the book and in the film is the blues, which James Jones died in, I think, in 1979. Anyway, his daughter Kayleigh, who's quite a distinguished, or a very distinguished author in her own right, and who we really had to get to agree to support this, because here was a team load of Brits trying to do something with her father's great work. And it took a bit of a while to really convince Kay that we thought we knew what we were doing. And she said, "You've got to remember that the blues, the traditional blues music, maybe slightly country blues as well. I mean, Pruitt comes from Kentucky, which is the home of the Everly Brothers and many great country artists. And we tried to keep an element of that great blues tradition. And there's a song in the book, Re-enlistment Blues. And that's a very important factor to keep in. But in the movie, you don't hear a lot of music. You hear a bit of Hawaiian music, and we have a bit of Hawaiian music because the whole thing takes place in Honolulu. And so music seems to work for the storyline. But one has to remember the elements of, it's not like all Andrews Sisters type stuff from the 1940s. It's Hawaii, it's the blues, it's country music from middle America. And all these guys in the army are getting away from something. They may say they hate the army, but they kind of hate what they're getting away from even more. I mean, it's such a layered book. There's so much in it. And it's one of those great books that you can, if you know the basic story, and there's no better way to know the basic story than see the movie, you can dip into any chapter, and each chapter tends to be a kind of, it's in some character's head. And there's an awful lot of the book isn't action. It's a big book, so there is action. But so much of it, I think, is just brilliant thought processes. You can imagine what it is like to be a kid who's gone wrong in Arkansas and escapes to the army.
Now, each one of those central quartet of characters, so you've got Burt Lancaster, you've got Deborah Kerr, and then you've got the two who actually won Oscars in supporting roles. You've got Frank Sinatra and
Donna Reed,
Montgomery Clift and
Donna Reed.
And Donna Reed. And Frank Sinatra won the Oscar outside, so it's slightly unbalanced.
Well, there's sort of 5 lead characters in a way. Yeah.
But were you conscious, because they were all such well-known actors at the time and celebrated actors, that it would be quite difficult then to cast? Were you looking for people of similar wattage?
Well, I don't think.
Or not similar, okay, not similar, comparable wattage these days.
Well, it would be very difficult, I think, to get four huge stars. I mean, Frank Sinatra at the time was not. I mean, he was in a dip, and this was the film that got him back. Donna Reed, I should know more about this. I don't think Donna Reed was a megastar at the time. She was big and brilliant. But it's a totally different thing, making a movie for X million dollars and creating something for the stage. And you don't often get musicals over here, or even on Broadway, with big mega stars, because A, they don't stay very long, and B, the budget just can't take it. And I think when you have a piece like From Here to Eternity, in which there are 4 or even 5 virtually equal parts of importance, if you were lucky enough to get Anne Hathaway or Tom Hanks or somebody, it would, but only one of them, you certainly couldn't afford 4, it would slightly unbalance it. Having said that, if Tom had rung and said, "Can I be in your new show?" I probably would have said yes. but I think it's not a vehicle. It's very much a team show. I mean, I think we have a cast of 32 or 33, and most of them are on stage most of the time. They're soldiers or they're girls in the clubs, and there are 4, plus Maggio, the Frank Sinatra part, there are 5 big, important roles, but not one of them is a starring role on its own. They're stars at a level.
So obviously it's 60 years since the film.
Yeah.
And our attitudes to all sorts of things, including war and service and that kind of unquestioning service, have changed quite a lot since then. So are you having to reflect that, do you think?
I don't think we're trying to make any... We're not going into the show to say, right, let's make a point about A, B, or C, or let's try and equate what happened in 1941 with what's happening now. But I think human nature never changes. Situations change, and perhaps not morals, but sort of views of what's right and what's wrong changes a bit. But basically, the characters are just as they could be today. And I'm sure there are lots of people in the armies around the world today who are very similar characters to the characters played by Burt Lancaster and Montgomery Clift in the film. But you know, you can make parallels all the time, but I think if you try and make them deliberately, you end up not really making any point at all. It's probably best that we try and interpret the great story with terrific characters, and it's basically 2 love stories. That's what it really is.
I mean, I must say, I think the characterization, when you look at the film, stands up incredibly well because it's complex and nobody is straightforward, and the women are very well written, actually, particularly for that time, because they're not easy characters. But it doesn't have necessarily a particularly uplifting ending, the film. Now, is that a problem?
Well, it has an uplifting ending in a way. It doesn't have a very happy ending, but most of the musicals I've done, the lead characters died at the end, so doesn't mean to say that. But it has an uplifting ending because the bond between the 2 men, Warden and Pruitt, is so strong by the end. And Warden makes sure that Pruitt's memory is not sullied by the fact that he actually was technically a deserter. And when he tries to get back to his... I mean, he deserts having killed somebody, and quite rightly killed this person, if you can ever kill anybody rightly. He's trying to get back to his... As soon as then Pearl Harbor happens, and there's a wonderful confusion both in the book and in our show where he's cursing the Germans, and his girlfriend saying, no, it's the Japanese. And he doesn't even know quite what's happening, except he knows he's got to get back to his comrades who he knows are being attacked. And he dies through mistaken identity. And Warden, his sergeant, who has been responsible for putting him through hell in many respects, actually makes sure that Pruitt is not remembered as a deserter, but he's remembered as a hero. And that's uplifting.